Should persecuted Christians leave or stay in the Middle East? It's very hard to keep track of numbers, but if we look at Syria alone, more than half the number of Christians have been affected directly by the war. Now, on the one hand, why shouldn't they leave if their lives are in danger? But on the other hand, could you imagine a Holy Land without Christians? To help us sort this out, I'm now joined by Carl Hétu, who is the National Director of the Catholic Near East Welfare Association, National Director for Canada. Mm-hmm. Carl, welcome back to our show.
Nice to be here.
Yes. So just for people who might be hearing this name for the first time, Catholic Near East Welfare Association.
Yes.
Some people call it Pontifical Missions. What is the work that you do?
Well, the Catholic Near East Welfare Association, some pronounce it Kenewa,
Yes.
Senewa, CNEWA, has received a unique mandate by the Holy Father, the Holy See, in 1926. And still now, 90 years later, we are working towards the Eastern Catholic churches. And so we're working with them, through them, and for them. And wherever they are in the world. So it could be in India with the Syro-Malabar Church, Syro-Malankara Church, in Ethiopia with the Ethiopian Church, Eritrea with the Eritrean Church, the Copt of Egypt, the Melkite, Maronite in Lebanon, the Syriac and the Chaldeans in Iraq and in Syria, the Melkite as well. So the Ukrainian Catholic Church in Ukraine. Yeah. So wherever they are, we're there to work with them.
Specifically the Eastern Catholic churches.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people probably haven't even heard about, that there are Syriac Catholics or Armenian Catholics or Melkites or Maronites. Okay, they're all in communion with
Rome.
With Rome.
With the Pope.
With the Pope.
And there's even a congregation of Eastern churches in Rome with a prefect named by the Pope to oversee that all those Eastern Catholic churches are heard in Rome.
Interesting. And so there's 23 Eastern Rites churches, correct?
23.
23. Do you have a sense of how many numbers of Christians?
A few millions. They're very small because all those churches have been decimated over time. But just to give you an indicator, Maronites about 2 million, the Ukrainians a bit more than 2 million, Syro-Malabar they're two some million. But all the other church, Syriac Catholic, the Armenian Catholic, all those churches are very small, like 500,000, 200,000. The Catholic less than 250,000. So they're very small churches, but they are of the first churches.
Right, of course. And if we look at the Middle East region specifically, do we have a sense of how many Christians are there or are still there?
Yeah, if you include Egypt, here we're talking about Orthodox and Catholic.
Yes.
You're talking about around 11 million. Yes. 11 million, and there's about 8 million alone in Egypt.
Really? Copts?
Yeah, Copts. Orthodox and Catholic.
Okay. And also, just again, so that we understand what we're talking about, is it fair to refer to that whole Middle East region, including Egypt, as the Holy Land? When you talk about Holy Land?
It has evolved. I think traditionally people would say Holy Land, Israel, Palestine.
Yes.
But we know Holy Land is also where Jesus went. Well, he went to Lebanon in Tyre. He went to Jordan, the baptism. His apostle after him, Paul, went to Damascus and converted on his way to Damascus in Syria. Saint Mark went to Egypt, and the entire Egyptian people converted to Christianity. Saint Thomas went to Mesopotamia. The entire Mesopotamian people became the Assyrian of the East and the Chaldean Church of Iraq. So all those churches are apostolic, really.
So these are the earliest churches.
Absolutely.
What sorts of issues would Christians in that region, and I guess you could include India and Ukraine or Ethiopia as well, but what issues are they facing? Well, other than, I guess, persecution? I mean, we know the war is affecting
it's different in every country. In times of war, of conflict, like in Syria and Iraq, because there is no central strong government, then there's more a sense of impunity and anarchy. And when that happens, religious minorities are the first one targeted because nobody is there to protect them. And those minorities are Christians, mainly. And so if you go to Iraq, 2003, there was 1 million Christian. With the whole war over there, now we're talking about today, less than 200,000 of them. They were forced to leave. Many were kidnapped, tortured, killed. but many of them just simply left because of the political, economical, and the war.
Yeah.
In Syria, it's the same. At the beginning of the war, the Christians were not really targeted per se, but in the last 2 years of the war, they have become very persecuted by groups because there's total impunity.
Right.
And when that happens, Christians, because of their small numbers, are the first one to be targeted.
Okay.
But in other countries, yes, there might be discrimination, there might be hardship, but I would say Christians, Eastern Christians, are survivors. They know how to adapt to any situation.
Yeah.
After 2,000 years, they're still there, and that's a proof that they're very good at it.
Yeah, okay, but you're saying that it's not that they're persecuted because they're Christian, more that because they're minorities.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So last time you were here, in this show,
Yes.
we were talking about the Iraqi situation, the
Yes.
Iraqi Christians, which they're still an issue, but we've forgotten about them.
Yes.
So you mentioned that they've gone. There's only 200,000 left in Iraq.
Yes.
Where did the rest go? Are they still in refugee camps in Jordan and other places?
No, actually, what's important, unfortunately, our world, we're a media-oriented world,
Yes.
social media-oriented world.
Yes.
So the media go into a conflict,
Yeah.
and then you have a snapshot, and you can look live what's going on. So
Yeah.
here you are in the summer, August of 2014, and nobody have heard of the Islamic State then.
No.
Suddenly they show up in Mosul, one of the second largest city of Iraq, where most of the Christians are.
Yes.
They move in June 2014, and the Islamic State's coming. People are leaving fast. They're going to the next town, an hour away. Then in August, the Islamic State moved again. And all those people, 100,000 Christians, plus Yazidis and other minorities, were
Yes.
forced to leave because the Islamic State said,
Yes.
if you don't convert now to our interpretation of Islam,
Yes.
you'll get it.
Yes.
And so 100,000 people left, just like that, all at the same time. All the media were there. Remember, it was all
Yes.
on TV.
Yeah.
It was there. People, remember, there was some Yazidis stuck in the
Yes,
hook in the
and
mountains.
yes.
The helicopters went to save the people that were
Yes.
starving, surrounded by Islamic State.
Yes.
It's live.
Yes.
So suddenly, the cameras decide to go somewhere else. Well, what happened to the Iraqi? Well, they're still there.
Yeah.
And they are still displaced in their own country. They have not gone back to Mosul. They have not gone back to
No.
Karakosh or to the Negev Plain. They are where? They are in the Kurdistan state, waiting it out. Many have left. There's about 8,000 of them right now in Jordan, 10,000 in
Yes.
Lebanon, and thousands and thousands more are refugees that have come to Canada over the last 10 years, even before the event of 2014. Many Iraqi Christians came here. They're in
And other
Europe,
places, yeah,
they're in
yeah.
Australia, in the States,
Yeah.
and this is why 3 years ago, or about 4 now, the Holy See created a new diocese for the Chaldean Catholic Church in Canada.
In Canada, so
because
that's
there's
for the
so
Iraqis
many,
who are
yeah,
Chaldeans.
because there's so many that came here
Yeah,
in the last
okay,
5-6
interesting.
years.
So now when Christians leave any of these countries or these regions, they're not going to go back.
No, and that's something that we don't understand often when I talk with people is, well, why not? They're refugees. They should go back to their
Well,
home
they
if
would
there's
say
peace.
that they want to go back.
Yeah, but they can't. And the reason is simple. If you go to Iraq, there's 25 million people. There's only 200,000 Christians left. And so when you're in a village and your entire village is gone, there's no more Christians there. If I want to go back, where's my church? Where's my priest? Where's my school? Where's my job? So as a Christian, everything's gone. But if I'm a Muslim and I go back, well, there's still 24 million Muslim in Iraq.
Yeah.
And so it's much easier for Muslims to go back
Yeah.
to their country. Doesn't mean it's easier because of the war, they have to rebuild, it's hard, hardship. But for a Christian, it's more than that. They've been uprooted. Their roots as Christians of 2,000 years are gone. I mean, the Islamic State burned old manuscript dated the 4th, 5th century. That's like the heart of the Chaldean church.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just recently, one of the oldest monastery that was like 6th or 7th century old, the Islamic State destroyed completely. It's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, those like heritage from the past
Right.
that are gone. So they want to wipe out the history that's there.
Okay.
So those Christians, of course, all the Christians, I can tell you, all of them, and I've met over 100 of them, just in this last trip in January, none of them told me they wanted to go back.
Oh, really? So
They will not go back. They will not
Okay.
go back.
So would you say then that when we look at, I mean, here everybody's thinking about refugees and refugees coming into our country in Canada, should that be a criteria for accepting refugees? Is that they are religious minorities and that's why they're being
Yes.
displaced?
It's from that point of view we just talked about, it's clear suddenly that if the Canadian government or other governments in the world are not placing religious minority as a criteria, and in this case Christian,
Yes.
it could have been another group. It
Yes.
could be the Shiites in Saudi Arabia
Yes.
that are being persecuted
Yes.
as a minority. It could be the Yazidi, a group, and they're all group before Christ that are being slaughtered in Iraq. But those groups should have privilege when we are looking at refugees to come here,
Right.
and privilege to receive aid. But right now, our Canadian government has not made, let's go publicly, this announcement. So is it the case? We're not sure at
don't
this
know.
point. At this point, we can only assume that it is not a priority, and it should, because we're a victim of war. Everybody is equally a victim of war.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's insane. The insanity of atrocities of war hit everybody. But if on top of it you're a Catholic, and wherever you go, you're discriminated against, you're persecuted, and you're told you're kidnapped or will be killed because of your faith, is that a reason to say we should get those people out of there and fast?
Yes.
That's one of the reasons they don't go in the camps. There's no Christians in any camps. They all go.
Really?
They all go in Jordan, Amman. They go in Beirut, in the big city. They're seeking out the churches because they know that's the only place they'll be welcome.
Interesting.
It's not that the Muslims, they don't trust the Muslims. It's just that the camps are run by Muslims.
Yeah.
And you're the only Catholic, you're 5 families. How can you live your faith there? It's like,
Yeah, it's very difficult.
it's very
Interesting.
complex.
Yeah.
So they go in the urban center. They don't have access to the UN camps
Yeah.
and all the services. So the only thing remains is the aid that comes from the Canadian public giving to Kenewa. Kenewa prioritized
To the Catholic
the
Church.
Catholic Church
Yeah.
to help those people.
Okay, we're going to take a little break.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. We're speaking with Carl Hétu of the Catholic Near East Welfare Association of Canada. And when we come back, we'll look at the situation in Syria in a little more detail, so stay tuned. We're speaking with Carl Hétu of the Catholic Near East Welfare Association of Canada. So I think we understand why Christians are persecuted. Are there other issues that Christians in these regions are facing? I mean, maybe because they're minorities or because they're Christian, that are not specific to the persecution of the war that you talked about?
Well, Christians in general in the Middle East are always struggling, but at the same time they generate a lot of wealth, income, because they're well educated. They are engineers, they're professionals. They offer a lot of schools, a lot of social services. So actually the Christians have played over time and have been appreciated by the Muslim community around them by the excellence of their services regardless of your faith.
Right.
So it's why that even though there are 2 Iraqi hospitals run by the Christian, even though they are a social institution, orphanages, school, universities, businesses, name it, it's all over, generated job and services to the poor, the
Right.
marginalized, but most of the users are Muslim.
Are Muslim.
And they will go there and they
Yeah.
will tell you, we go there because we're respected
Yeah.
as an individual. And so this is very powerful for the Christians. So what is hard to understand now is in a time of crisis that suddenly some Muslims, certainly not the one that are receiving the aid that we're talking about, but others from other countries often and in time of war decide to basically take away from their own brothers and sisters Muslim those great services in the name of a God that says all those people are heretics and should be should be Muslim.
Yeah.
It's too bad because all those Muslims disagree with them.
So, okay, so let me stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
So this idea that Muslims don't get along with Christians in the Middle East is false.
Yes, it is false.
It is false.
But we have to explain that a bit, right?
You have to explain that a bit.
Yes. The grand majority of the Muslim have lived in cohabitation for the last 1,400 years.
Yes.
There's been up and downs, but the Christians are still there. If there was an attempt by Islam and the Muslims to get rid of the Christians, it would have been done a long time ago.
Yes.
It was not done.
Yes.
Okay, in Turkey, it was done. There's only a few left. It's nothing. But all over the Middle East, I'm sorry, but the Christians are respected. They're welcome. They're a great contributor, job creator, and the whole society has benefited from the emergence and the services and the dynamism of the Christians. So now that it's going, like in Iraq, there's barely no institutions left. But who's losing? It's the Iraqi
Everybody,
people.
yeah.
They know, just the education alone. I met a few years ago the Iraqi ambassador to Canada. He's from Kurdistan. And he told me this world changed when he went to the school of the Dominicans. Because going there is suddenly his eyes open to the world.
Yeah.
And he says, I am who I am now because of the Dominicans.
Yeah.
And respecting not only the Christians, but all life.
But he's a Muslim.
But he's a Muslim.
He's a Muslim.
And he says, what I like, they respected me because I was a Muslim. They never tried to convert me, and I respected that.
Yeah.
And I will defend them.
Yeah.
You know?
So then how do we, I mean, it sounds like you and Kanewa would support the idea that Christians should stay in the Middle East.
Of course.
Of course.
Yes.
So how do we make that happen? Because there's
We make it happen.
war.
No, but listen, there are two things happening right now. If you look at Syria and if we look at Iraq, those are the two main countries that's happening. And if we have time, we can talk about Palestine as well, in Israel, because there too the Christians are going through hardship. So if we look at those two countries in particular, because of the war, there's been a political battle to control the two countries. Because of that, you know, we have to reflect the Middle East is known for its old-time tribal villages mentality.
Yeah.
It's one of the unique place on this planet where Muslim, Christians, and Jewish live together. It's very unique.
Yeah.
A lot of tribes, a lot of different ethnics. Some are Christians, Yazidi, Druze, you name it. There's so many of them.
Yeah.
And so it gets very complicated because right now in Syria, who leads Iraq? It's the Alawites, which is kind of a branch of Shiites, Muslim. And so, of course, if the Alawites, which is a 10% in Syria, lose power, Assad, who's going to protect the Alawites?
Yeah.
They've been persecuted for almost 1,000 years by the Sunni.
Yeah.
So now they know in the negotiation that's taking place now in Geneva, okay, we'll change Syria, but who's going to protect us?
Yeah.
And the same thing in Iraq.
And that's what happened in Iraq. Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
it. And so this is what's going on. So for us, our point, and I will repeat it, and the best solution to keep the Christians in the Middle East is to have peace in Syria and peace in Iraq. If there's no peace there, I'm telling you now, there will not be any Christians left in those two countries in the next 5 years. They'll be totally gone.
So how do we do that?
Well, we do like our Pope is saying, we promote peace. We tell people that peace is possible because we've done it before. And right now, if there's war, it's because the world, starting by the Syrian people, the Iraqi people, and then the regional power, Iran, Turkey, Israel, Saudi Arabia, have different interests for those wars. Then there's the Shiites and Sunni that have interests. And then you have Russia and United States and Europe that have interests. Of course, all of that is about petroleum and resources as well. That doesn't help. It's about selling weapons. When you have economic crisis in the West, selling weapons and create jobs. They were happy. Look, the Canadian government agreed on selling millions, if not billions of dollars of small trucks to Saudi Arabia. Good business. Where are those trucks going? So that's all part of the dynamic. It's hard, but the Holy Father says it might be hard, but the only place that things will happen is at the negotiation table in Geneva right now. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. It's going to be rough. It's going to be, we'll be angry. But you know what? The alternative to peace is already unbearable.
Right. So they have to want peace. They have to want to figure it out.
But right now the wanting is there.
Is it?
Yeah, it is there because look what happened in 2015. we saw that little boy that died
Yeah.
on the coast of
Yeah,
Turkey in
yes.
Greece, you know? It was terrible tragedy. Since then, there's been hundreds of little kids like that drowning. Hundreds. And their parents, and then their brothers and sisters, you know? And then there's been thousands and thousands of refugees going to Europe,
Yeah.
you know, forcing their way in. Well, that has waken up the Canadian, has waken up American, it has waken up especially Europe. And now they're saying we cannot allow that to happen. How many more will come?
Yeah.
Every day they come. There's nothing we can do to
Okay,
stop
that's
them.
interesting that you're saying that. Yeah.
But of course,
So the reason
suddenly,
Yeah.
the crisis that was in the Middle East,
somewhere is now at home.
it's at home.
Yeah.
And so the people at home are saying, we better solve this quick because we'll end up in a big mess.
Yeah.
I
Interesting.
mean, think about it. I was in Jordan and Lebanon. Those two countries are untouched yet by the war of Syria and Iraq. Untouched.
yeah.
But they are touched.
They can't
have-
handle the refugees.
They have think about this. 4 million people in Lebanon, they just welcome 1.4 million refugees.
Yeah. Yeah. They can't handle
It's
it.
as if we had 10 million people from the United States coming to Canada.
Yeah,
How
yeah,
would
yeah.
we react?
Yeah.
Jordan is the same. Over 1 million refugees, 6 million population.
Yeah.
They have done their share. They
Yeah.
can't do that anymore. And,
No, and they're
everywhere
saying-
I've
yeah.
been, people have said that.
Yeah,
So,
interesting.
So if Lebanon and Jordan fall, you know, let's say they break, I mean, all the violence will go where? The next step is Israel. Do you understand? Then it's Egypt. It's
the
going to
Arabian
blow. So
Peninsula,
it has
yeah.
to stop
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
There's no choice. Peace is now.
Yes.
And the
I don't
Pope-
know if you're giving me hope or not.
Yes, I'm giving you
Okay,
hope
thank
because
you.
all the dots are playing now. In 2016, this is where things will happen. We see it now. The United States, Russia, Europe, all the countries realize that this Islamic State needs to be controlled,
Yeah.
needs to be done for, and the only way to do this is through peace in Iraq, peace in Syria. Instead of fighting between each other, let's fight the total enemy, which is Islamic State, and let's finish that off.
Okay, so then all the refugees that are coming to Canada, let's say, like I was telling you that in my parish we sponsored a Syrian
Yep.
family. I mean, we still need to welcome them
Yes, of course,
and welcome them. I mean, that's
Yes.
still something that we can do here
of course,
to help the situation
yeah, because you know.
and not be afraid if they're Muslims or.
No, quite the contrary. What a beautiful testimony to
That
have a
we-
Catholic
yes.
parish welcoming a Muslim family.
Yes.
What a beautiful testimony.
Yes.
In my town, in Gatineau, right beside Ottawa, the mosque there, the mosque, Muslim
Yeah,
mosque,
yeah.
they're welcoming a Christian family and a Muslim family.
That's great.
I mean, isn't
That's
that
great.
beautiful?
Yes.
And they do it purposely
Yes.
as a sign of solidarity.
great.
And so if there's one testimony is this one. So if there are parishes that are a bit disappointed right now because they're not welcoming Christians,
Christian family.
the benefit for
Yeah.
peace and interreligious dialogue that this represents is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Now, but if we support Kanewa, we're also supporting the Christians that are there that can stay there because
Yes.
they're getting education,
Yeah.
they're getting supplies
Yeah.
through
Everything.
through Kanewa.
Yeah.
So Kanewa.ca.
Yes, absolutely.
CNEWA.ca. That's the Canadian site.
Yeah, it is.
And how people can donate.
Absolutely. Online, no problem.
Online.
Phone, mail, absolutely. And you know, our mandate is to focus towards Christians. I mean, 94% of the aid last year to refugees went to Christians.
Yes.
It doesn't mean we don't help the Yazidi, the Shiites, or the Sunni, but there are so many
But you
groups.
would help them through the Pontifical Mission
Yeah, through
agencies that are in
through,
the... Yeah.
through
Yeah,
our
yeah.
own offices there,
Yes.
and through the local church. And we reach out to those Christians because they're falling through the cracks, like we said earlier, as urban refugees. And there are many, many, many more groups
Mm-hmm.
that are helping the refugees at large. And it's the opposite. 95% of their aid is towards Muslim. So for us, our mandate by the Pope is to ensure there's a Christian presence in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
So all the Christians that want to stay, we will help them. The other one that have decided to go, we will help them too, to wait it out until they have a way out.
While they need to be
That's it.
relocated.
And their kids
Yeah.
need, of course, schooling, healthcare,
Absolutely.
emergency
Absolutely.
aid.
Okay, so that's CNEWA.ca, Kanewa.ca. Not just money, but prayers too. Carl Hétu,
Absolutely.
so great to see you again. Thanks
Yes.
for coming down.
Yeah.
Carl Hétu is the National Director for the Catholic Near East Welfare Association of Canada. Thank you so much. You know where you can support them. And if you have any questions, you can also reach us here through Facebook or Twitter, or you can send me an email at pedro@saltandlighttv.org. Thank you for being with us. Keep our brothers and sisters in the Middle East in your prayers, and may God continue to bless you and your home.